Hey everyone, Pastor Wes here with you on Wednesday night. Hope you're doing well. Just want to talk to you for just a minute on relying on the Lord. I want to share with you from 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 7 through 9. It says this. This is Paul talking. He said, "To keep me from becoming conceited, because of these surpassingly great revelations, there was given me a thorn in the flesh, a messenger of Satan to torment me. 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." He goes on to say, "Therefore I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me." This is one of those passages that we hear quite often, hear debated quite a bit about the thorn in the flesh, but we also see it used together with Christ's prayer in the Garden of Gethsemane to show that not all requests that we bring to God are necessarily granted. But I don't think we should lose sight of the truth that every Christian prayer is heard by God. Every prayer is answered by the Lord. It's just not always answered the way that we think it should be answered. It doesn't always come in the time that we think that it should come. But Paul asked the Lord to remove this ailment, this nagging ailment, this what he called this thorn in the flesh, because he felt like it was impairing him from being able to spread the gospel. And it seemed to Paul as if Satan were a boxer just standing in his path, throwing punches in his face, and he couldn't make any progress to what he wanted to do. Yet this thorn in the flesh really served a good purpose in keeping Paul from becoming proud from all of the visions and all the revelations that he had received, as he said in verse 7. But God simply, we know, could have told Paul, you don't have any right to have, to answer, to have this question, to ask this question, to get the answer to it. You don't get the divine wisdom that goes along with this in this matter. But when Paul asked for relief, the Lord uncovered a very important truth that has become just a well of encouragement for so many Christians ever since, because in it, God says, my grace is sufficient for you. My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Now, the ultimate purpose in all suffering that we go through as Christians is that we experience and develop a full, deep knowledge of our need to rely on the Lord. To rely on His grace alone in our lives to get us through whatever we're facing. And it's easy for us to say, well, I do depend on God for everything. It's easy to say that when everything is going well, that you depend on God for everything. When your bills are paid, when there's money in the bank, when there's food in the refrigerator and the cabinets, when the car's running good, it's easy to say, I depend on God for everything. But when all the props that are underneath you suddenly fall away, and you're weak and you're helpless and you don't know what to do, you don't know where to turn, and that's when we learn from the experience of how much we really depend on God's grace in Christ. We don't know exactly what Paul's thorn in the flesh was. All the theologians and all the scholars through time have tried to explain it, but we don't know exactly what it was. We do know that if he had have wanted us to know, then God would have told us exactly what it was, but he simply calls it a thorn in the flesh, and it makes it possible for us to be able to compare it to pretty much anything that we're going through in our body, anything that we're facing, whatever it is. And the fact that he calls it that thorn in the flesh teaches us not to worry. One of the things that we don't often bring out is the fact that he says it's in his flesh. And so the important thing to understand about that is that there are times where there will be thorns in our flesh, that God will permit, God will allow there to be thorns in our flesh. They'll stick there, but they're going to do so for our good. The important thing is to remember this. Even though you may have a thorn in the flesh, God is not going to let it touch your soul. So learn to rely on God, especially when you're going through infirmity, when you're going through what Paul would call a thorn in the flesh. Learn to rely on God. When everything else around you is falling apart, rely on God. When everything's going great, rely on God. Next time we'll talk about something just a little different. Till then, hope you have a great rest of your week. I love you. God bless you.